My name is Karen Bhatia, and I'm from the New York City Economic Development Corporation. I head up our creative and applied tech group, and the reason why I'm up on stage is because we'll talk a little bit more about this, but the city is putting together the first VR, AR lab that's publicly funded in the country.
And just for the record, I'm part of the team that is hoping that we get that RFP to build that AR, VR center. So it's very nice to be sitting next to you. Anyway, my name is Adaora Udoji. I'm an adjunct professor here at NYU, among many things. I teach storytelling at ITP. I'm also an angel investor, and I've been working in this immersive technology space for the last couple of years, mostly on the venture side. And I love New York City, and I think the potential here is tremendous as we see the evolutions of these technologies happening everywhere, not just in one place, but globally, and New York being the center of so many mature sectors and industries. The potential is really extraordinary here.
And I'm Brian August, and my company is called 110 Stories. And I'm a lifelong New Yorker, born, bred, probably will die here. And I started out in this space about 9 years ago when I created an app called 110 Stories, also the name of my business, which allowed the user to see a silhouette of the World Trade Center as it would have existed from anywhere within 40 miles around the New York City environs. And now I work with real estate developers to do a similar thing to enable them to tell the story of buildings that haven't been constructed yet using various forms of digital assets and immersive media.
Is there a better place to do that than New York? Like, I honestly don't know if there is.
Not only is there not a better place to do it in New York, but I'm based in downtown Brooklyn, which kind of looks like the Dubai skyline these days with, when I first moved there 6 years ago, I think the bank building was the tallest building in downtown Brooklyn, and now it's like number 9.
We can scooch. Now I'm scooching too much. Cool. So my name is Callie. You've probably seen me around a lot. I have just launched my company, Braver Labs, which is based here in New York. We are aiming to bring everyone together in this industry, from content creators, enterprises, nonprofits, all of these groups that some are more proficient in immersive technologies than others. We want everyone to understand what's going on in this space and the impact that it can have across industries on social causes, and empower all of these people to build solutions to some of the most challenging problems that we're facing today. So I'm really excited for that to be here in New York. I think this is the epicenter of the world in so many ways. We're so lucky for that. And I can't wait to hear about this lab.
That fits in perfectly with what we're doing in the city itself, and the reason why we thought that this was such a tremendous opportunity builds off on what Google was talking about earlier. Aaron was talking about how we view this as the next stage of computing, and it has such tremendous applications, especially in New York, where we could leverage a lot of the industries that are already here. These are industries that could really benefit from the technologies of AR and VR. Healthcare, education, retail is a huge one as well, just across the board. And we thought that this was a tremendous opportunity to provide a platform where we could actually bridge an ecosystem gap that we've heard recurring throughout the conversations that we've had with people in this industry. So people would say that we have a lot of difficulty capturing early stage financing and grants. That's one of the biggest problems that we have. We have the brands here in New York. We have talent here in New York. We have tremendous assets in terms of storytellers and content creators. We have tremendous academics and academia here as well. But how do we create a platform where all of these people come together, including venture capitalists, the angel investors, and catalyze growth in this area? And our goal at the New York City Economic Development Corporation is actually one of business development, enterprise development, innovation, and job growth. And we wanted to make sure that New York is at the center of development of VR and AR here throughout the world. And so far it's been lagging in comparison to some of our West Coast cities. So we thought that this was a tremendous opportunity for us to really catapult this ecosystem here in New York And in addition to all of that, make sure that all New Yorkers, a diverse set of New Yorkers, are participating in this. They're the storytellers, they're the ones who are creating the enterprises as well. Their stories are being heard, their businesses are actually forming too. So that's pretty much the goals of what this AR/VR lab is for economic development, for innovation, and for job growth. And we just view New York City as just a tremendous place that could leverage all the assets that we currently have.
So I'm really curious, what do you think are the most immediate next steps that New York as a city needs to take to become really the center of augmented reality, especially here on the East Coast?
I think one, and Richard from Pepsi talked about it earlier. I mean, this is such a simple thing. It's really overwhelming, it being immersive technologies, I think, for many people in leadership and some of the corporates and so on here in the city. And it's a simple case of actually trying the technology. There seems to be a real blockage of how do I access this technology? Do I need a headset? Do I need a visor? Where do I get it? I mean, I have these conversations that are really ground level, and then once they see how simple, I mean, right now, today, you can access some really interesting experiences, both as a consumer at home or for enterprise purposes, as we've heard a lot about in the last 2 days, that are materially optimizing whatever your core business is. And I'm not sure how we bust that bubble. We spend a lot of time, or at least I spend a lot of time having these conversations. Obviously, people in this room, how many of you have actually downloaded an app for VR or AR and experience? See, I think this is a huge, we're a huge outlier, right? And I'm not sure what whether it's a question of more hardware flooding the marketplace, it's seeming to be more simple, because until the leadership really has a sense of why those of us who are working on it see it as the future, it's hard to move that ball in terms of funding, in terms of engagement, collaborating, and the R&D that needs to happen in order for us to move forward.
So I've spent the last probably 8 years trying to drag the real estate industry into the future. And part of it is just waiting for them to catch up to you. There's some part of it just can't be done no matter how much you try. And I agree that you have to just get them to do it. And I am starting on a project now that I think is a very good example of how to do that and do it incrementally. So next year in 2018, the National Conference of the American Institute of Architects, which has about 100,000 members in 200 chapters across the country, is having their national conference in New York. And what I'll be building for that event will be an immersive tour of 100 buildings throughout New York City. And that will be done with some of them being existing buildings, some of them being buildings that are currently being constructed, and some of them being buildings that haven't been built at all yet. And that will be a very mixed immersive experience. There's certain visualizations that make sense for AR, there's certain visualizations that make sense for VR, for 360 drone photography, but the most important thing that I think that ties all of that together is the story. A lot of these experiences have beautiful visualizations, but if those visualizations aren't connected through a narrative that sort of acts as the mortar between a different set of experiences, then you're really just presenting islands of experiences without having an overarching theme. And a building is a perfect example of how to do that, and architects are a really excellent audience to go after, because they are obviously extremely visual and forward-thinking people. So that's a project that I'm going to be undertaking and would love to talk to any of you who might have some thoughts about how to do that best.
I'd like to chime in as well here, and we also see it from another perspective, and that perspective is that of access to the equipment, to the hardware, and just for the greater population to know that this is an area that's up and coming, and it's an area that's very sticky. Like you were talking about, Brian, it's about the story, and it's something that's very compelling, it's very immersive. And one of our goals is also, through this lab that we're going to be announcing shortly, The goal is to have access throughout the city, to make sure that people have access in their communities to local demo sites where they see what this is like, where they're actually able to put on a headset and have access to a headset and see what the experience is like, both as just an individual, a potential consumer, as a storyteller, a content creator, when they are later on down the line able to create their own stories too. So part of it is being able to experience it themselves, and that's one of the reasons why we also view this lab not only as having demo spaces throughout the city and workforce development throughout the city so people could actually participate in this and get jobs in this and start businesses in this, but we view this as a tremendous opportunity for people to share the technologies that are quite expensive right now. Even though they are diminishing in prices, this is one of the barriers that's being faced. So we view this as an opportunity to help decrease those costs and provide more access.
Tamiko?
Yeah, talking about getting the technology into people's hands, getting them to use them. I mean, as a artist who's been working with AR in public spaces, that's a great way to do it. So somewhere, you know, in a very public space, you have an event, and what really worked really well when I did the Gardens of the Anthropocene in the Olympic Sculpture Park in Seattle is they had huge big kiosks with a big image of what you would see and a big image of how to download it. Then always the problem is that people don't know their password. But the other thing is the project I did in East Harlem with the CCC ADI, the Caribbean Cultural Center and African Diaspora Institute, you know, had like 8 of their artists putting their art, their culture up in their neighborhood of East Harlem, El Barrio. The content still exists. They've gone through that process. I would love to introduce you to them. And, you know, in 2012, when I met Marta Morena Vega from the CCC ADI for the first time, it was a time when I would talk about AR in an art environment, people would say, "You are so elitist. You are aiming at such a tiny, tiny, really rich segment of the world population." And when I talked to Mata, she immediately said, "Oh my God, that's the way of the future. Every kid on the block here, once they get their sneakers, they're going to want their smartphone." And she saw it immediately as a way to reach a whole different population, her population, which is an underserved, underprivileged population, and give them a reason to be engaged with this technology of the future. I'd love to introduce you to her.
Would love that.
Great.
I think you brought up a really interesting point, which is actually navigating a city like New York and how to make use of the resources within this city. I know everyone on this panel has had a lot of experience navigating this ecosystem. What does it currently look like for you in your experience, and what are the things you really want to see improved on that? Fun question. I'm really curious, you know, and then I'll kind of chime in.
So what we've seen, as I mentioned before, is that there's an ecosystem where it's been very fragmented. And that's why we initiated this idea of a AR/VR lab to bring all those pieces together. I see tremendous potential, like the 2 panels ago that they were talking about, which is something that's just personally very exciting for me, is as we're seeing the changing nature of work, the potential of using these technologies for workforce development, training in-house as well. I think there's just so much potential there. And just across the board, as there's changing consumer habits right now, the changing nature of retail, just how this is going to affect not only from our view as an economic development entity, not only job growth and economic development, but how things are progressing and changing within certain brands and industries right now, and how we can start adopting these technologies in order to get in front of these changes as well. So in terms of what we see in the ecosystem, you know, we see a lot of parts that's existing, and we're trying to create and facilitate a way for all of these pieces to come together, and there's just tremendous potential. And a big aspect of it is, you know, year over year, we've seen from 2015 to 2016, just in New York City, there have been a 100% increase. We've doubled the amount of jobs in these areas. So it's increasing in demand, it's increasing in tremendous potential as well. And slowly the capital is getting there, and we're trying to figure out ways, innovative ways to bring all the pieces together and really foster innovation and investment in these areas.
And
Okay,
what
let's
I would
do a
add
round
is
of,
that what we're seeing more and more of, is
We have closing
is-
comments.
I mean, the realization of all of that is you see increasing number of exhibitions, whether it be at ITP or at the Magnet Media Center, but you also see Samsung in the Meatpacking District has a beautiful showcase where you can go in for free and you can experience a variety of different immersive technologies. And we see a VR arcade that's opening near Empire Building, supposedly this month. There's another one on the Lower East Side. So you definitely see some engagement, between Google and Facebook. They've done some really interesting things in various schools. So we see them in the news, and you see it across sector, from fashion and media, and even in fintech in terms of data visualization, especially given the evolution of technology. But one of the things here that all of us know and that everyone has been talking about is this technology is evolving quickly and slowly at the same time, right? Which is that the pieces are changing. I mean, even the pronouncement by Google of web-based VR, I mean, that's really game-changing in terms of access and the kind of content that we can start creating that people can then access through that. So you see a lot of engagement and a lot of interest, and so it's just converting that into helping move this industry along.
I constantly remind people of something that's very simple and obvious, but I'll say it again. While there's incredible advancements in the hardware that brings you all of these experiences, for the foreseeable future, I cannot overestimate the importance of this, which is 100% ubiquity in terms of its presence in the audience that you're wanting to see. And while there are going to be amazing, amazing advancements, probably sooner than we think, to other ways of visualizing things, as a stepping stone, as a way to bridge the gap, do not underestimate the power of the mobile device to be what takes us there.
You guys, round of applause.